Welcome to our first episode of Clayton News Network Season 2. As always, I'm your host, Owen Weiss, and today we will be talking with Mayor McAndrew about the ways Clayton has been recovering from last year's tornado. Let's dig in. Hello, welcome back to Clayton News Network. You've been on here before.
Yeah.
So today we'll be talking about the tornado that just absolutely demolished everything here in Clayton. Well, my first question is, how are we as a community recovering from that?
Um, so I mean, I think in terms of, I think people have always continued to help people with, if they had yard work and just stuff that needed to be done around their homes. I think that was something that continued to happen and probably continues to happen. People, I think, as you can see, there's still lots of properties that need, I mean, there's still plenty of roofs that need to be wrapped. There's still plenty of windows that are out. That's certainly true. You can see that, at Fonfon, you can see that, especially on homes along Wydown and on Aberdeen and in Arundel. I think those were certainly our hardest hit areas. So I think, in terms of recovery efforts, for residents, I think people are certainly still, I don't think it's always been easy. I think some people have had good experiences with their insurance companies and some people have had not so good experiences. So it seems to really differ widely depending on who you talk to and which insurance company they're dealing with.
For people who haven't yet gotten help, are there any resources that people can utilize to get what they need? I mean, like, let's say someone still has like a broken window and no one has come to fix it yet. Like, who can they go to talk to help it get fixed?
Well, I think people are just talking. I mean, so I think the way insurance works is a lot of times people will, if somebody's window hasn't been fixed, for instance, or a window or their roof, I think it's because they're still just waiting on their insurance company to approve a roofer or approve like a company or a contractor to do work on their home. So I think most people have an idea of what they need to get done. I think it's just a matter of making sure they have all their ducks in a row with whichever contractor, roofer that their insurance company has approved. I don't think anybody's unable to get help. It's just a matter of them having to jump through the hoops related to their insurance company. Unlike a lot of people in the city of St. Louis who didn't have insurance, I think our residents largely had home insurance, so they're able to, you know, get help. It's just, having to deal with waiting, for roofers that are available and just waiting for approvals from insurance companies.
Yeah. What was the most reported problem caused by the tornado?
The big thing was obviously lots of tree limbs were down. So I think that was the biggest problem. There were a lot of trees. We have big, beautiful trees in Clayton. So I think trees blocking driveways, streets, trees pulling up sidewalks. So then people,
Yeah.
could walk down sidewalks, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm sure with individual homes, it was just everything related to, roof damage, windows being blown out.
So, that's actually a perfect segue to my next question. So I've heard a lot of people talking about how bare Wydown looks now after the tornado hit. Are there plans to replant the trees?
Yeah, so there's definitely a plan. So we lost, over 1,000 trees were affected by the tornado. I would say 300 or 400 of them just have to be pruned. So you'll see crews around town right now because a lot of tree companies for pruning, I'm just talking about, a lot of times that's done during the winter because, all the leaves are gone. So it's an easy time to do it. So we've contracted with a company called Timberline, who's doing a lot of our tree pruning for the next like 3 or 4 months. So it should be done by the springtime. In terms of the trees that were lost, so we lost about 700 trees, if you can believe it, during the tornado. We will go out to bid soon for a contract to replant about 1,000 trees. So every year we take out about 100 trees because that's just throughout the city. They either are, old or there's some sort of disease. So we replant about 100 trees every year. So with the 700 trees that we lost, plus about 100 trees, we will plant about 1,000 trees in the next 3 years. That will kind of start next fall. So basically, starting next fall, we will plant just over, maybe about 350 trees every year. We will plant the most trees, like percentage wise. It's a pretty elaborate formula. So the most trees that will get planted will be in like Ward 1. So like Aberdeen was the most, other than Wydown, Aberdeen was the most hurt street in terms of tree loss. So they're going to get a higher percentage of new trees as compared to like your street on
Right.
Merrimack. Like even though Merrimack was hurt, um, you will get new trees in the next year, but you're maybe not going to get as many new trees as Aberdeen because they lost more trees, if that makes sense. So there is a very elaborate tree planting. We can't plant 700 trees next fall. I mean, honestly, the biggest reason we could potentially contract out and our crews could potentially go through and plant 700 trees. The problem is, we're a small community. We don't have a lot of public works crews. So in 10 years or in 5 years, when all those trees have to be pruned, because trees have to be pruned, that's just how you keep them healthy. Our crews could never prune that many trees. So that's why we can't plant 700 trees next year, but we'll plant all 700 new trees in the next 3 years to make up for the tornado.
So you have to space them out.
We have to, because otherwise it just would be untenable for our crews to be able to keep up with the pruning of all those trees at one time, like at that cycle when they have to be pruned. Wydown Boulevard, especially between like University and Demon, where it was really hurt the most, that will probably be on a separate planning schedule because we will definitely start planting trees there next fall, but there's a little bit more work that has to go into that area because we have to put the electrical circuit went out. So we have to have a civil engineer make plans for a new electric circuit, a new irrigation line, because all that got pulled out too. So that Wydown median area, especially between like Wydown Middle School and Demon, is just a bigger project. So that's kind of taken out of the other planting schedule. But it will be worked on in the coming year as well.
So, is there anything that Clayton people, like people who live here, can help out with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, neighbors, of course, like as I said, I think are still helping neighbors with their homes. A big thing that I think will happen in the next 6 months to a year is we have the Clayton Community Foundation is our kind of our nonprofit arm that accepts donations. They're going to undergo a big effort to try to raise money to help us with tree planting. So I think they're going to do a big fundraising effort in the next 6 months, again, just to help us make sure we get some of the cost of all this tree planting covered. Even though we're getting FEMA money for debris removal, for lights, for electric lights, sidewalk fixing stuff like that, FEMA doesn't reimburse us for any sort of tree planting. So I mean, that's a big way that, I think people who are interested, I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, I'd love to donate some money to help plant trees. So I think that's at least a financial way that people can help.
Yeah. Like financially, how much lasting damage has this done to Clayton?
You know, yeah, I mean, we're lucky in Clayton. We had healthy reserves, kind of like a savings account. It's called a fund balance, but you would know it as like a savings account. So we were lucky. I mean, Clayton's very financially healthy, so we were able to use some of these reserves in order to basically, that's why we were able to kind of clean up so fast, because we could use our reserves to kind of get all those trucks in and get all that debris removal out. Um, so, however, that's still, costs are still coming in, but let's say it's about $5 to $7 million in tornado money that we're having to spend out of our general fund, so our fund reserves. We're hoping because President Trump did declare a federal disaster area, so we're still hoping to get FEMA funds back. So, the federal government will hopefully reimburse about 75%. And then SEMA, which is the State Emergency Management Association, so SEMA does 10%. So we're hoping to get about 85% back on what we expended. So, which is great. That I think, we still haven't gotten any checks back, which is not unusual. It takes a long time. We have meetings every week. Our staff is constantly talking to our FEMA representative who was assigned to us. They're often asking for more information. So yeah. So, I mean, again, it's hopeful that we'll get about 85% back, which would put us in great shape in terms of, even though, we had this great, healthy fund balance, it's still hard to lose that chunk of change, especially since we're, wanting to do other things around the city. So, like the effort in Shaw Park.
I was gonna ask something like that. So was this money like set aside for natural disasters, or was it taken out of like a savings account or just for stuff in general?
Yeah, it's just stuff in general. Like I wish I could say we had like it's just, yeah, it's kind of just a savings account, but it's always good to have a savings account because you never know when stuff like this is going to happen, right? So, but that's kind of why you have a savings account, because you never know when, I mean, who would have ever expected a tornado? But yeah, so, but it's just set aside usually, if all of a sudden, like, there's a big huge problem in the road or something that we have to fix all of a sudden. But yeah, that's kind of what a savings account or a fund balance is used for.
Yeah. So you told us like what some of the adults of Clayton could do, but a lot of kids don't have the money to donate. So is there anything that students in Clayton or just kids can do to help around?
I mean, I think always, I think if you ever see, kids are constantly walking around. I think if you ever see a older neighbor that might still need some help with yard cleanup, I think that's something that's always certainly great. People like you spreading the word about, what's happening, like understanding when you hear stuff about like, oh, everything's so bare. When are we going to plant trees? You can say, oh, I talked to somebody.
Yeah.
The city is going to start planting trees. So I think making sure the right information is getting out, so that people know what's happening is always, a great way, something that people can do without giving money.
That's all the questions I have for you.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
You are very welcome. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Clayton News Network. Make sure to leave us a 5-star rating, follow our podcast, and leave us a comment on what you thought. Now go out and help someone. All royalty-free music was made by Adobe Podcasts using the Baseline song.